Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex. If you think today's tip or guest interview can help someone you know, please share this with them. And if you enjoy listening to our show, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button on the episodes. Finally, aside from our podcast, our day job here at Riderflex is to provide recruiting, staffing, and consulting services. You can visit riderflex.com to learn more about us and get the information on the services we provide. And now, a quick word from our sponsor and friends at Marketing 360.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
You said you're doing some chimney work. I don't, most people don't have real chimneys that you can put wood in. So what year's the house?
It's about 1970, I think. And it's a townhouse. I just moved in and it's getting a little chilly here. So I'm getting ready to fire up the fireplace.
That's cool. I love a real fire. It's super awesome to have those. I haven't had a house with a real fire since I lived in Connecticut some years back. We had a real fireplace and takes a little bit of work. You got to kind of know what you're doing.
A little bit. Yeah. I figured it out though. I gotta chop some wood too.
Right. Do you have like a splitter? Do you just buy it?
I have an axe, and I just kind of
really,
have a little fun chopping some wood.
Man, your back, is your back okay when you do that?
It's all right. Yeah. I'm not too, I don't go too crazy.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you're my age. I graduated 85. I saw you graduate age 4 high school.
Yes. Yep. I've been
man, that was a different world compared to the world we're in now, wasn't it, my friend?
Absolutely. Everything's different.
Completely.
I think about how many things have changed since then, in my life and everybody's life, things are just a lot different.
Well, I always tell my friends, we'll get into the cannabis industry and stuff with the Panther Group, but I always tell people, I said, look, here's the deal. When I was in college, there was only two kinds of weed, right? There was the weed you had, or you didn't have weed, and that was it. There were no flavors and names and strains. Maybe there was. I don't remember any of that growing up in Oklahoma. It was just like Johnny had weed or he didn't. That was it.
Yes. And you never knew what it was called, and you never knew. You just got it, and there were a lot of stems. Never
really knew how high you were going to get. You're like, okay, well, whatever. I don't know. I've had 5 beers anyway. So, just completely different world. Completely different world. We had to stuff the little towels underneath the doors in the dorm room at the college to make sure this, crack the window.
Yeah. No, it's just hiding it from everybody. Now we don't have to hide anymore.
Right. I'm still getting used to that. I was in Denver. I've told this story on the podcast before. I was in Denver with a client of ours because we're a recruiting firm. So we recruit for all kinds of industries, but cannabis is one of them. And we had this big cannabis client. We'd placed a bunch of people there. Anyway, we're taking the CEO out to dinner. And after dinner, we just stepped right out on the street, and he just lights up right there.
Yeah.
And I still remember I was kind of like, like looking around. I was kind of nervous about it.
I know.
It's totally different world, man. Totally different world. But anyway, tell us about Scott. Family, personal life, early on, where you grew up, some stuff like that. Go for it.
Sure. So I grew up outside of Philadelphia, PA, Lower Merion, Pennsylvania, and still live in this area in the suburbs here. I have 2 daughters one's a teacher, kindergarten teacher. She's 24, and the other's a sophomore in college.
Cool.
So I'm super proud of my girls, and they've grown up and they're doing great. And, so I've been living here forever, and I got involved in the jewelry business in the early days out of college. I got into a family jewelry business, and about 5 or 10 years into it, I started thinking about the web, and I built a website and learned how to do Adwords to sell jewelry. So that was kind of the early part of my career, was learning online advertising to sell jewelry items.
For somebody else. You were working for somebody else, or you were working for
That
like
was a family business. We actually manufactured jewelry. My dad's business. Yep.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Really? What was your grandfather also in it, or your dad started it?
No, just my dad's business. Yep. We actually made jewelry and sold it to stores and sold it in catalogs. Yep. So we were craftsmen, and
Wow.
it was,
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty cool. And then
So your dad was like, your dad was like, hey, listen, figure out how to get this shit on this thing called the internet. Like, figure out how to.
Well, it was a really interesting evolution, and it took a long time. But we sold through traditional retail stores and through catalogs, and then I was like, why don't we sell it online? And I learned how to do AdWords and started buying keywords for jewelry. And
how about that?
A couple $100 a month, and all of a sudden it was outpacing anything we were doing in terms of sales. And so pretty soon I was like, okay, let me just go down this path a little bit more and see what else I can do.
How about that? You were selling direct to the consumer, so you got in direct to consumer retail basically, or e-commerce. Wow. Okay. What's your wholesale customer? Were your wholesale customers like, hey, what the hell are you doing? Were you pissing off your wholesale?
They didn't really know because they weren't really internet savvy, and they didn't care as much.
Gotcha.
But over time that became more of an issue. In the beginning, it wasn't.
Now, a jewelry manufacturer. What is that? So what do you like get? You get like bulk gold in and shape it? Or like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Yeah.
So basically that's it, Steve. We would get gold like in raw form, either sheets of gold or pebbles of gold, and we would melt it and we would put it into wax carvings. So lost wax casting is something we did a lot of, where we would make rings and necklaces from scratch using wax and then pouring gold into them.
Wow. Okay. That's a cool. How about like diamonds in bulk too? And you're like fitting the diamonds in?
Yes. We were setting hundreds of diamonds into rings and necklaces and things like that. Yes.
Wow. Is this pretty secure? I'm guessing this is a secure operation. Your warehouse had lots of security, I'm guessing.
We did. Yes. And there were police on the corner. I was in a jewelry district, so there was a heavy police presence, and it was very secure, but it was, diamonds are easy to steal. So we were very careful.
Yeah, right. Loss prevention, and that was like must have been a huge part of your culture. Had to be.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay, so you worked for your dad or your family business, and then walk us through the rest of your career a little bit. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. So I started to do AdWords for other people. Jewelry business was kind of difficult those days, so I started hustling around. Okay. I was selling diamonds online for other people. And then I just started really getting into AdWords, and I started talking to other friends who had businesses, and they all said the same thing. I built a website. I'm not getting enough traffic. Can you help me? Okay. And so I started getting hired by a guy that did landscape architects, guy that did medical alarm buttons. And, all these different friends of mine had companies, and they started hiring me to do their AdWords. So after like the 8th or 9th time, the light bulb went off, and I said, AdWords consultant, that might be a good move for me. Okay. Unfortunately, at the same time, my father also had gotten very sick over time, and, it was a tough time. So I needed to transition into something else. And so I got into AdWords full time. This was about 2007 or so. Okay. And then in 2008, I was fortunate enough to co-found a company called Audience Partners. And the idea there was to do politics online. So
what does that mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Political campaigns online. So back in those days, right before Obama ran, about 2% of a political budget was spent online. Most of it was spent on television, radio, and print. We figured that it would change. We knew that online advertising had taken market share in every other vertical. And so we knew that it would take, political advertising. There was a lot of waste in it. Okay. So we started the idea of geo-fencing zip codes for AdWords. Okay. So if you had a congressional race, you only had to show the ads in the zip codes where you were running. You didn't have to show them in other places. And this was a huge advantage over television advertising. So what we did then was we created a data-driven programmatic ad engine. We took every registered voter. So we did offline to online data matching. Okay. We took every registered voter in the country. We matched those to cookies, device IDs, and cable boxes. And so we did addressable voter targeted advertising. for a long time. And we became leaders in that space, early on, and we got a patent on it. And
really?
Yeah. So we were pioneers in political advertising online.
How about that? How did you get the client? What'd you do? Go to like the Democratic Party in a certain state or county and like pitch your service, or how'd that work?
A lot of it happened through Washington, D.C. Actually, we went down there. We opened an office on Capitol Hill, and we started walking around Congress and selling them on advertising, targeted advertising.
Now I can just imagine what some of those conversations are. You're walking around on Capitol Hill. There's a senator or whatever. And you're like, hey man, I got this tool, this service that's going to help you get reelected. Here's my card. Let's talk.
Yeah. And they were like, what's that? How does that work? I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, it was very simple though. When you're running a television ad, you're serving an ad to everybody in the area, including places where you're not running, right? But when you're running a digital advertising on the internet, you're running specifically to that cookie target or that zip code or that audience member. So we would target a Republican registered female voter with one ad and a Democratic male voter with another ad. Same website, same time of day, sitting next to each other, they'll get a different ad unit. That's
pretty cool. Now, did you have ties to, how did you open some of those doors? Did you guys know some people? Did your dad know some people?
Yeah.
Like, how'd you kind of wiggle your way in there?
So my partner in that business was actually asked to run for Congress. He had started a very successful internet company. And he was an extremely high net worth guy. And they said, hey, we want you to run for Congress. And he said, no. He's like, I'm too honest for that. He's a way too honest guy to be in Congress. But, then he said, well, wait, what do your clients do for online advertising? And, the consultants at the time were like, we don't really know what we're doing. And that's where the idea came from.
I see. Very good. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys exited that with a successful exit, or what happened?
Yeah. So a very successful exit. We basically ran it for 10 years. And we were able to, what we did on the ad tech side also was we plugged the data into 30 or 40 different places. So all the major, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they all had our political data. And so we also added healthcare into the mix a couple years into it. So instead of political files, we bought ailment and prescription data. It was HIPAA compliant opt-in data. And so we started working for hospitals and health systems and pharma companies, and we sold addressable healthcare advertising.
Okay. What year did you exit?
2017.
2017. Who bought?
We were purchased by a company called Altice. It was actually Cablevision. So Cablevision bought our company, and what we had done at that point was we had done cable TV targeting as well. So we did something with the cable companies where we could target the same user with a cookie, a device ID, or their cable box. So Cablevision bought us, and because they wanted to just roll that into their ad stack.
So this is how Panther Opportunity Fund got started, because now you had some cash and now you're an investor. Is that it?
That's exactly it. I'm let me add how fortunate I am for this whole thing. I was very lucky to be able to. I quit right away after we were acquired. I had already started the cannabis thing a couple years earlier. And so I was like, it's time for me to invest my own capital. I wanted to actually learn venture capital really, really well. So that's why I joined the Panther Opportunity Fund, so I could just learn a lot about it.
Okay. So Panther Opportunity Fund. Now that wasn't yours. That was you weren't a founder there.
So there was a previous fund. So let me back up a sec.
Yeah, go ahead.
Started I went out to California in 2014 and I tried to start an advertising business. It was too early. Nobody could afford what we were selling. Instead, we started a business called the Cannabis Rep Network. It was independent sales reps. So we were like, we're not growers, we're not retailers, but we know business. And so we talked to these guys, and none of them had sales reps, and none of them had enough marketing and sales distribution. So we started a sales rep business. And we started taking product into stores in California.
You contractors, you're just like, hey, I can supply you with 1099 sales guys. Here you go.
Yeah, and we could get you into more stores. Everybody had the greatest weed on earth, right? I've met the best weed grower 150 times. That guy makes good weed too, and so does that guy.
But no, hold on. Let me make sure I understand. So now 2014 was before you exited your company.
Yes.
But you were already thinking, okay, I'm getting ready to move on. I'm thinking about my next steps, all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We spun this out.
Okay. Why cannabis though? How the hell did you get from Google AdWords to, okay, Cablevision is going to buy us, and then poof, I'm going to go out to California and like supply sales reps to cannabis. Like, how'd that happen?
That's a good question. So in the Marijuana Policy Project is a nonprofit that runs ballot initiative ads in many states. They're actually responsible behind the scenes for a lot of the legal things that we have today, because they basically fought the fight with the state reps and wrote the bills. Okay. And so they became a client of mine in 2014.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Okay. I was actually running ads in Alaska.
Okay.
Vote yes. And I see a female with one ad, a male with a different ad.
Okay.
Yeah. And, so it passed in 2014 in Alaska. And so I immediately was like, well, what's going to happen in 2016? And in 2016, we had a good chance. We felt like California would be ready. Okay. And so we said, let's go out to California because they're going to switch from medical to adult use in 16. Okay. So that's when markets really take off.
Mm-hmm. I see. That's how it happened. So were you a cannabis guy? Like, were you like, were you like a cannabis consumer, a big cannabis fan, a cannabis advocate, any of that?
Yes. So I became a very big fan of cannabis around the time I joined my fraternity in college, you know what I mean? And I just realized that I enjoyed it more than alcohol. Actually, I got better grades when I got better grades when I stopped drinking as much and smoked a little more weed. But then what happened was after I got out of college, I just was, I wasn't focused on this at all, but I saw things changing over time. I saw the politics of it change. And I thought, it's a dumb law anyway, it shouldn't be illegal. Yeah. And I thought eventually it'll get changed. So I became an advocate.
Okay, great. All right. I was wondering what the tie in there was and so forth. Yeah. Okay. How was your dad, by the way? Well, is your dad passed, or is he still?
Yeah, he passed.
Okay. But he knew he was still alive when you got into cannabis, I'm guessing.
Barely. No. Actually, no.
Okay.
It was before that. He got it was a long time ago. So yeah, I'd gotten into the political thing. But my mom's around and she thinks it's great. And she's a patient. She's a patient now, and I've gotten her. I used to hide it from her for many years. Now she's a good advocate.
What the first conversations when you're like, "Hey, Mom, look, here's the deal. I'm going to go to California and I'm going to start this business to supply sales reps to cannabis." How'd that conversation go?
It was very interesting. I spent many years just hiding and not telling my mom or whatever. And she was very, to her credit, I just gave her a lot of information, and I would send her articles, and she realized that it was not what she was taught. We were all taught something wrong many years ago. Right. And now it's been corrected. It's correcting itself, which was very exciting.
Have you ever smoked with her?
No, not really. No. One time we did. I mean, I bring her stuff but we don't do it together now.
It would just be odd, wouldn't it? It would be for me. I would be like, okay, this feels weird. I can't do this.
Yeah. Well, one time though, we were on this phone call, and she's a cancer survivor, and I had a nurse on the phone, and the nurse said, "Yes, Mrs. Berman, you should definitely be a patient. Here's what I recommend." And she calls me up and says, "Listen, that's great, but where am I going to get any of this stuff? Like, I don't live in California." I said, "Mom, I'll be over in 15 minutes. I got it." And she's like, "Oh, you have those vape pen things?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got them." And so
that's so good.
And now she's she's a happy patient. She's doing well.
Very good. Okay. All right, cool. Thanks for tying all of that together. Okay. So you're in California. Let's go now. Let's jump back up. You start this. I guess it would be almost like a staffing firm, kind of, right?
Sort of. It was outsourced sales reps, actually. Okay. So what we would do is we would take 4 to 5 products in a time, and we would take them to 50 stores in LA or 50 stores in San Francisco, and we would charge the brand for that exposure. And then we would go in and meet with the owners of the store, the bud tenders, and say, "Try this edible, try this oil." And then they would say, "Great, I'll take 3 cases of it." And that's how it turned into distribution.
Very good. Okay, cool. And what was that LLC, or what was that company name? What'd you run that under?
That was called Calyx, Calyx. Okay. Calyx Distribution. Okay. I believe it's still around today, although we exited that company in 2018 or 19.
That's your second exit. Was that one successful too?
Not quite as much as the first, Steve. I always tell it like it is, man. It was not an easy, it was a difficult time actually in those days. And it was, California was very, crazy to do business in. And so we faced a lot of pressure, and we had a Canadian firm come in and say, we want to just take all of it. And so we sold all of it, and, they took over, and the rest is history.
Okay. Then what'd you do? What was next for Scott?
So then it was the venture fund. So the guy that invested in my the startup is a doctor, a physician out of Atlanta, very successful entrepreneur. And he had a previous fund. He had started the Panther Fund, and it had just gotten going. And I called him up and I said, I want to invest, and I want to learn from you. He introduced me to his son, who's now my business partner, Jordan Tritt. And so the three of us and two other guys basically started investing through the Panther Fund. And that was 2017. And so we've had 4.5, 5 years of that fund. We've looked at over 700 companies, invested in 16 out of that fund. The other fund, between the two funds and our personal investments, we have about 43 to 45 investments in the space, and they're in 22 different sectors.
So is the Panther Group and the Panther Opportunity Fund, is it two different funds, two different, explain tell me the difference here.
So the Panther, there's three funds actually. The first fund was called TL Partners. Second fund is Panther Opportunity Fund. Now we have our third fund called the Panther Micro Fund. Okay. So that's our third venture fund. Last year, we decided to split off the Panther Group because what happened was we were getting hired to do a lot more than the fundraising, strategic advisory, outsourced CFO services. We've done a few mergers. We've taken one company public. We have a lot of connections in the space. So we were able to make a lot of strategic introductions to people. And we were getting hired to do this as consultants. Additionally, I was getting hired to do the marketing and data and advertising side of it. And so the more that we got, hired after the money came in, we realized we had another business besides the venture fund. So we split it off and created the Panther Group now.
Okay, gotcha. And how many people involved in the Panther Group right now today?
I believe there's 9 or 10. I think there's, a couple are part-time, but we're based in Atlanta. And, we have a great team, really exciting.
Give us the overview. Give me the 3-minute elevator pitch for the Panther Group. And by the way, I like the video that you have on the website. It's a nice little video that you got there that basically walks everybody through exactly what you guys do. Nice. Love that. And for the listeners, it's thepanthergroup.co, thepanthergroup.co. It's got a nice about us page, a nice video overview, but in your own words, give us the 3-minute elevator pitch. Go for it.
Thanks, man. So there's 3 main pillars to the group. One is the fundraising. So we do have our fund. We also have SPV opportunities where we have a couple of hundred investors that have done deals with us. So we put together interesting deals and we shop them around to people in our world. We work with family offices. We work with other VCs in the space. And so we like to syndicate deals and bring money in. Second pillar of the Panther Group is strategic advice. A lot of CFO, a lot of financial services, helping with pitch decks, helping with a B round and an exit, but also just finding the right vendors, finding the right people to do business with across the whole ecosystem of cannabis. So that's part 2. And then part 3 is devising marketing and data solutions. So a lot of these companies are underinvested in sales and marketing, and they all say the same thing. If we can finish our fundraise, we will put more money into marketing and data and tell us how to do it. And so then I come in and design marketing campaigns, that are digital campaigns, but also data centric so that we can increase their market share and customer acquisition.
Very good. So if we start a cannabis company, if somebody I know starts a cannabis company, you guys can help us from start to launch, really, because you can help us all the way from building the original pitch deck to raising the cash to getting the operation set up to starting the sales and marketing. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is very accurate. And it's actually a key selling point for the Panther Group is that we have experience across the entire life cycle. We've invested in pre-revenue deals that are software related. We have vertically integrated things that aren't built yet. We also have a company that's $100 million valuation that might go public in a year. And between the team members, one of my partners also in the fund is an M&A specialist for 25 years.
Great.
And so he's able to take the company and say, we're going to exit. We have a buyer. Let's negotiate. And so we love to be able to, I compare it to children. I'm a dad. And so there's infants, there's toddlers, there's teenagers, and there's adults. And these companies need advice all along the way. It's such a new industry. Yes. And depending on what market you are, you might have a 1 or 2 year old company that needs everything. Or you might have a 10-year-old company that's trying to go public. And so we have experience to help you all along the journey.
What's my return on the investment side? 8, 10, 12? How soon?
Sure. Yeah. Sure, Steve. It's 12x on the deal.
Yes. I'll call you after we finish recording.
It's an interesting question, and it's different for every different sector. So I mentioned that, we have lab testing, we have software, we have grow operations. So the multiples and the exit potential are really different depending on, the scale of the operation and the sector that you're in, and also the timing of it. Yeah. So many things are overpaid for in the early days, and then prices come down.
Prices still coming down, you think?
Well, maybe, but maybe not. So again, it depends on the sector. So I also I'm a big fan. I always will bring it back to politics, Steve, every time, because this is my North Star here. And basically, based on the political changes, both locally and nationally, that will really affect the prices.
I see.
Businesses, because there's certain rules like the tax rule, the 280E, and the safe banking rule. If either one of those things gets fixed anytime soon, everybody's price goes up.
Yep. Game changers if there's tweaks there. Let me ask you this, if this is a fair question. There's like, if you look up cannabis consulting, like if you just Google cannabis consulting, everybody's, all these people on LinkedIn, they're all cannabis consultants, and they all have their little companies. There's a million of them, right? These days, feels like it.
Yes.
What is the special, is the special sauce for you, the fact that you have the investor relations and the knowledge to go from beginning to end to get a business set up? Is that the special sauce, or how would you describe it?
I think that's definitely a big part of it. Part of it is that we have the experience, and we've looked at 700 deals. That's part of it. We understand the sector and where it's headed. We have a lot of experience in the very mature states like Oregon and California and Colorado. And so we can sort of look at Michigan and Massachusetts and Maine and understand where they're headed because of having the investments in all those other places.
Okay.
The other part is, I think, having the 22 or 23 different sectors really sets us apart. We have plant touching assets, we have software, we have trade shows that we're invested in. And we also serve on the board of a lot of these companies. So we have a lot of influence on how they operate.
You serve on the board plus an equity stake in some cases?
In many cases, yes.
Is that part of your model? If you help somebody out in the early stages, do you say, hey, look, I'm going to give you a break on the consulting services, but you're going to give us an equity stake in this deal?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Very good. Awesome.
Sorry, one thing, Steve, one thing that's really nice to hear a lot of this time is that there's a lot of money out there, and people say to us, we can get money from here or there, but we really want Panther Group because of the other things that you represent besides the money. Because we have the data and advertising is a big part of it. Everybody gets excited about that, but also the ability to handle a merger, or the ability to raise money at a higher valuation, or to fix corporate governance, or all those things. So that makes us more valuable than the actual check size that we bring in.
Have you ever met executives from a cannabis company that weren't in a messy situation?
No, not really. That's why it's fun.
Yeah, right. There's plenty of business for you, right, to go around. By the way, no offense to any of my cannabis executive friends, but yeah, most of them are messy. But the reality is, most companies are messy to a certain degree. Forget about just cannabis.
Yes.
out of all the companies I've either ran or been a part of or was an executive in or consulted for, I mean, hell, I mean, you know, everybody is messy to a certain degree, right?
Especially early on, you know,
yeah,
it's tricky.
yeah.
It's a tricky space. It's not easy. And, you know, there's a lot of growing pains.
What's a crazy situation? Give me a good story. Like I don't know, you're like early on, you're helping with cannabis, and I don't know, some guy pulls up in a van with like $1 million worth of cannabis and opens the back. I don't know, something crazy. Give me a good one. Give me a good story.
I'll tell you, the distribution business was a challenge out in California because every township had different rules. Okay. And so one time our driver was driving through somewhere to get somewhere, and he broke down or something, and the cops came and to help him. And then they found a whole bunch of product in his car, and they arrested him and took the car. And he's like, I work for a distribution business. I'm on my way to Oxnard, and I had to drive through whatever. And so so we had to go down. So someone went down to the yard where the car was towed, and said to the guy, listen, I left some things in my car, whatever. And, you know, and we took the weed out of the trunk. You know, it was totally like kind of in it. It was art, you know, legally we were transferring. We had a license. It wasn't illegal product or anything, but like, we were like, are they going to keep this stuff, you know, and for months? You know, there's product in the car. They got to get to the store. So I said, send someone down there and talk to the guy and tell him you left something in the trunk.
Oh man, you got the charges dropped for the kid, I guess.
It was no charge. You know what? There was no charges. Like eventually they're like, oh yeah, you guys were, you know, it just took them. It was just screwy. You know, we were legally allowed to do it, but it was just a wacky situation.
You live in Pennsylvania, right?
I do. Yeah.
What's that? I don't even know what is it medicinal there
medical,
or what?
Yeah. Yeah. We have a medical program here. It's a pretty strong program.
Okay.
Yep. And it's going well, and hopefully it'll flip over to adult at some point.
But you can't, it's not recreational like Colorado where you can just go down to
Not yet.
Don't you think it's just absolutely absurd that if I go to Texas and get pulled over, that I can do jail time for the same stuff I have here in Colorado? I mean, I just think that's crazy. I just think about that. I'm like, wow, there are actually human beings in other states getting arrested every single day and put in jail for stuff we're doing in Colorado. Like it's no big deal. I just think that's crazy.
It's really crazy. And this is why I'm still a big advocate, because we still got a ways to go. We've made a lot of progress in many states, but there's many states that haven't made any progress. There's still people getting locked up for no reason. We're part of something called the Last Prisoner Project. Actually, it's give a plug for them. They're trying to get every single person out of jail that's in jail right now for cannabis.
Yes, please.
And so we were just raising money for them in Vegas, and it's a really good cause. And of course, we know that 80 to 90% are minority, and that's a big problem. And so this is why the advocacy is so important to us, is because the laws need to change before we can all make a bunch of money. We need to get the laws fixed.
Totally
and
agree.
Certain states we've done a great job in. But it's so weird, the dichotomy between a Texas and a Colorado, and it doesn't make any sense.
The fact that there's even people in Colorado in prison for something that happened with marijuana before it was passed legally, like I just can't imagine being one of those guys sitting in a jail cell, knowing that you can go right down to the street and buy marijuana now in Colorado. Meanwhile, they're still sitting in jail for that. That I feel terrible for those people. I feel really bad for those people. Yeah, that's crazy, man. I'm glad you gave the plug out.
Yeah.
Okay. We're headed in the right direction. Still got a long way to go, just like you said. And you guys are positioned, right now to help people do that.
Which politically things are better than ever, though, in ways, because you have something else that's about to happen, and that is New York and New Jersey.
Well, in New York, I thought New York's only medicinal, right?
No, they actually voted adult use in. It hasn't been implemented yet. But
okay.
So both of these markets were some of the smallest medical markets in the country. They're both now flipping to adult use.
Okay.
Jersey will be first, and then New York will be next year. And so what that's going to do, and the East Coast is already getting a lot busier between Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont. And now you're going to have New York, Jersey, hopefully PA, and you have an enormous amount of population that right now doesn't have access and will very soon. And that's going to have a seismic effect, similarly to what happened out west. So first you had Colorado, and then Colorado was the big deal. Then you had California,
yep,
and Washington and Oregon and Nevada. And now it's just like, it's basically everywhere out west. So it was a seismic shift. We're now undergoing the same seismic shift on the East Coast. And when it's fully realized, you're going to have, another enormous, part of the country that's fully adult use.
New York, by the way, did they pass only wasn't there very few licenses or something like that? How many did they give out? Okay.
Yep. They just originally, they only gave out, I don't know, 10 to 15 in the beginning.
I mean, that's just,
that's nothing.
That's nothing. And how did you get selected to get one of those first 15? You're telling me side deals weren't made behind the curtain in some dark room somewhere? I mean, come on.
Sure. Oh yeah. There's a lot of shenanigans that go on with licensing. New Jersey had a lawsuit that lasted 2 years because of the licensing process. They just resolved that. And so, yeah, every place is different. There's always problems with it, but eventually it gets sorted out. It's just a question of how it's managed. Listen, Colorado, they were the tip of the spear. They made a lot of mistakes, but they also were the first people to do it. And so every other state has tried to improve upon that model.
It's interesting when it was first passed in Colorado, because that's where I live, Colorado. I thought to myself, okay, I haven't really smoked. Like I was one of those guys, I don't know, we go to a New Year's Eve party or maybe a special event, or maybe I'm camping with the guys and somebody brought it, I would just occasionally, if I was around it or somebody had it, I would do it, but I wasn't a regular consumer at home, as I've grown up over the last 25, 30 years, whatever. I mean, in college, I smoked all the time, but that was a different life, But anyway, my point is, when it was first passed, I thought, wow, this is awesome. I'll switch from my bourbon to weed now.
Right.
And I just never, I still I'll take it when I go camping or, if I'm around I'm still doing the same thing I was doing. My point is, I didn't just start smoking all the time when it was passed. It was hard, right. Maybe because I was in this pattern for 30 years and I just kind of stayed on my same pattern. But I remember telling my wife when it first passed, I thought I was going to change all my behaviors and I was going to, but now I still just drink my beer and, but I do partake, and I do love the fact that I can partake without worrying about anything. Now it's interesting when I go camping in the Colorado mountains, sometimes I cross over the Wyoming state line and I go up to Wyoming and go camping. And every single time I cross the state line, I'm like, okay, well, what if I get pulled over with this? What happens? I don't know what happens.
Right. I know. It's a big deal, man. I was, when I finally got my medical card in Pennsylvania, it was a big relief.
I bet, right?
Because all those years of driving around thinking, I hope I don't get pulled over right now. And, it's like, I have a card. I'm a patient. It was definitely, it felt better from like a moral standpoint, almost. Like I don't break the law.
What do you girls think about your business?
Oh, that's a good question. And it's funny because in the beginning, I didn't talk about it much.
But they knew, but they knew,
but they also knew I was involved in politics. And so I explained to them early on that I'm part of trying to make the laws change. And I don't think these laws are correct. And they knew it, they were old enough to understand it. And so I said, I'm an advocate and I'm going to help the laws get changed. And I also just kept it, pretty low key. Didn't talk, didn't put it on LinkedIn for a while. Didn't put it on Facebook.
Just like everybody else was. Yeah. Everybody else was doing the same thing. Yeah.
And I just wanted to be a little cool about it. I had little girls and, so the older that they've gotten though, the more they understand that it's fine, and it's like, once they got over 21, 22 years old, it's like, hey, if you want to become a patient, if that's okay. I'm adamant that no one, when they're too young, should not have access. It's got to be over 21 all the time. But once you're an adult, then it's just the same as anything else, really. Make your own choices.
When up in where you live, when you go to like a social party or whatever, like a social gathering, I don't know, whatever, wedding, birthday party, I don't know, friend's place, are all your friends like Scott, man, Scott's in the weed business. It's so cool. Scott, talk to us. Tell us about it.
I got to admit, Steve, it's kind of cool. It really is kind of cool. People, people are very interested in what I'm up to. And I'm very grateful. Honestly, a lot of people want to ask my opinions on things and have me help them. And I really enjoy helping people and bringing them into the space. It's like, hey, come on in. There's a lot of opportunity. And, it's fun. I'm not going to compare it to any other job, but it is exciting and fun and interesting.
Now it's got to be. There had to be some times when you're at that birthday party and one of the dads are like, "Hey man, you got anything on you? Can we go?"
It happens every time. Oh yeah, I went to an engagement party the other day. Met the groom for the first time, and his gal says, he goes, "Oh, I hear you're in the weed business. Yeah, nice to meet you. Congrats on getting engaged." He's like, "Hey, can we go down?" So now we're walking down by the tree, and 10 minutes into meeting the guy, we're smoking up.
That's so good. That's so great, man. Yeah. I love that. I want to ask you a couple more questions really quickly. So now you're comfortable on LinkedIn, you're comfortable, whatever, like social media, hey, this is business I'm in. Do you ever get political on your social media? Do you ever like step out and like, I'm gonna say this or that. I'm going to take a side on some hot topic. You careful about that? Yeah. Never. Careful. Yeah.
I don't put my opinions on politics out. I lived in politics for 10 years and it was a tough business. And I realized that everybody's got their own opinions about things. I mean, I will talk about cannabis legalization and support that, but I don't get into any other things really.
What about I asked a lot of this question a lot lately with anybody coming on the podcast. What do you think about founders and CEOs going on social media and blasting out their thoughts on whatever the hot topic is for the month? Not a good idea. Not a good idea.
No, I unless you're talking about the subject of which you are an expert and you're a business person, if it affects my business and I could talk about cannabis legalization and make sense. Right.
Right.
But
exactly.
I'm not going to sit and talk about gun control
or whatever.
Control, anything else, because first of all, it's too divisive. I like to bring people together and politics. Yeah. I like to be friends with everyone, Steve, and
me too, bro.
Start to talk about politics, especially in the last couple of years, it's like, are you for Trump? Are you against Trump? Whatever. I'm like, I don't talk about it. I talk about it with my children. I talk about it before election day, who we're voting for, but anybody else, I just, kind of leave it alone.
I have been pressured by a few people lately, like, oh, you got a podcast, you guys got a decent following. It's your responsibility. I love that. I love that word. I love that word when it's shoved on me. It's your responsibility to blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. First of all, our day job is a recruiting firm and that's how we pay the bills. And I'm not going to go online and piss off a potential client. That's number one. Yes. Number two, I'm just like you. Like I have opinions on things. I have opinions and we can talk about them over beers, but I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not going to demonize anybody for any certain beliefs. I'm happy to talk about it. I always use this example. I'm like, look, if you like the color yellow and I like the color purple, that's cool. Whatever. We can talk about it. We don't have to be mad at each other though.
Yeah, it's been a rough time actually. I mean, being in politics for all those years, it's just very divisive. It's gotten worse.
It is, man.
We're being told to switch sides. Are you red? Are you blue? I'm like, I'm an American. I love my fellow Americans no matter who they voted for.
Agreed. No matter who they voted for, we can have a beer. I don't care who you voted for. It's all good.
Yeah. And look, it's also that this pandemic has separated a lot of people too.
Absolutely.
And, I keep my views to myself on that as well. I do my own thing for my own health and you can do your own thing. And that's the way it should be, I believe.
And I totally agree. I don't understand people hating each other for that either. I'm like, look, man, you do whatever you want. Mask, no mask, I don't care. Whatever you think. Yeah. I'm not going to be mad at you for whatever you're doing. Don't be mad at me.
Yeah. We need to be less mad at each other and more compassionate.
Less mad, please. Less divisive. Like, come on, man. It's okay. It's okay to disagree. It's cool.
Yes. Yes. It is okay to disagree.
It's okay to disagree. What happened to friendly conversations? I don't know. Anyway, last couple of questions here. We're almost out of time. So congratulations, by the way. on being an entrepreneur early on, right? And grabbing keywords like I remember that must have been crazy. You're talking about, yeah, I do keywords on Google, and people are like, huh? They don't even know what that is. I mean, congratulations on grabbing that early. What an awesome, insight to see what that opportunity and make money off of it. Then you had a successful exit. Great, congrats.
Thank you.
And then you had the balls to move into cannabis and become an investor and take some risk. I mean, that was a risk. You could have probably just taken the money off that first exit. I don't know, put it in some boring fund, bought a house down in Florida. I don't know, be a consultant for whatever. Like you could have done that, right?
Yes.
Instead, you had the balls to jump into cannabis and take some more major risks. Congrats. I mean, really impressive career.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. When you say it like that, it sounds pretty good. To me, it was just kind of one day at a time, like what's going to be next and all. But I'm very fortunate. I've actually been super fortunate to surround myself with super quality people, smart businessmen and women, really nice people. I only work with good people. And,
Amen, brother.
And I really enjoy the relationships and the journey that I've had. I've met wonderful people, and I always love meeting new people, and meeting you is great. And I appreciate the time today. It's just, it's fun for me, but it's also just, I love building the relationships that I've had too.
Totally agree. Last question for you. At this stage in your life, at this point now, if you had to define your core purpose in life, because as we get older, like especially me and you were in our mid 50s. And so as we get older, we there's more reflection. There's more, at least for me, there is. As I get older, I'm like, okay, so what was my life? What was my journey here for? What am I doing on this planet? If you had to define your core purpose right now in life, what would that sound like?
It's a really excellent question, by the way. And I think it's changed. Like you say, getting older, my core purpose for a long time was raising my daughters. Yeah. I'm a single dad too. So, divorced. Okay. And so I'm like, I got to be a good dad for a long time. And now, they're older. And so that things have shifted. I think my main overall purpose is helping people and making people, have a better day and a better life. I'm a Buddhist. And so I believe in, I'm into mindfulness and helping, people with whatever it is, helping them make their day better. Giving them comfort and compassion and also knowledge. I love the idea that I'm able to bring people into this space and educate them on the plant, but also how to run a business. I have a lot of employees that are all much younger than me, which is great. And so like getting them, bringing them into this world and teaching them how to be, businessmen and women, forget cannabis, just how to operate and run your life and build a career. I really enjoy that part of it. Man. And, yes, I do want to create wealth for a lot of these people too, and myself. Great. So that's a nice part of the purpose. But I think overall, like the journey of the friendships and the camaraderie and building things together, I think that's a big part of what gets me up every day.
I love it. I'm not surprised that you're a Buddhist like that. Your presence is very warm, right? Your presence is very warm. Compared to a lot of entrepreneurs and cannabis people I meet, which a lot of them are super cocky, super strong type A, yours is not like that at all, which is awesome. Okay. Now I said that was the last question, but now I got to get a funny one in here. Sure. So I didn't know you were a single guy. So being single entrepreneur in cannabis, I mean, that's a great line, right? You're just like, all you got to do is like go to the bar and you're like, hi, how you doing? My name's Scott. By the way, I'm in cannabis, and boom, you're just picking up chicks left and right.
Well, I wouldn't say it's that easy, but it's easier than I said I was in political advertising.
Right. It helps.
It's like, now I'm in the weed business. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hurt the situation, but it's fun.
I love it.
It's fun to bring it out. People are interested.
Scott, thank you so much for being on the Riderflex podcast. I really appreciate it.